This week we're talking about the Midwest region of the United States. There are 12 states in the Midwest. The Midwest region lies in the middle of the United States. Canada lies to the north. The Midwest is an inland region, meaning it does not have any border against any oceans. However, the Great Lakes form part of the Midwest's northern border. These lakes are so large that they hold 1/4 of all of the fresh water in the world. That's enough to cover the United States with water 12 feet deep. Most of the Midwest is flat or rolling land called the Central Plains. The Central Plains lie to the west of the Great Lakes. Much of the Midwest region was once a huge prairie. A prairie is an area of mostly flat grassland with few trees. Prairie grasses cover much of the land. The grasses of this prairie help make the soil extremely fertile. The Central Plains are low, but the area's land rises slowly west of the Mississippi River. To the west of the Central Plains lies the Great Plains. Here the soil isn't as fertile and there is less rainfall. The land is higher, drier, and rockier. The Great Plains can reach as high as 5,000 feet on the western edge. The Great Plains are mostly dry grassland with few trees. The Great Plains also contains sandhills and badlands. Badlands are barren, severely eroded places on Earth where the soft rock layers are sculpted into beautiful forms. These exposed rock layers are often wonderful places in which to find fossils. They're called badlands because the land is useless for farming and many other human purposes. Wind and water made unusual shapes in the land. 4 of the 5 Great Lakes touch the Midwest region. Rivers and canals connect the Great Lakes to the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf of Mexico. Ships can reach the lakes through these waterways. Large ports on the Great Lakes created major cities such as Cleveland, Chicago, and Milwaukee. Most major cities formed near rivers. Before railroads, travel on waterways was faster and less expensive than traveling on land. However, the lakes are not all the same level. Locks are needed to lift and lower ships from one lake to the next. Locks are part of waterways that are closed off by gates. Michigan's locks lift ships from Lake Huron up 21 feet to Lake Superior. The locks are the busiest locks in the world, with over 12,000 ships passing through it each year. The Mississippi River is another important waterway. The Mississippi River is the longest river in the United States. The Mississippi River runs through the Central Plains to the Gulf of Mexico. The Missouri River and the Ohio River are tributaries of the Mississippi River. A tributary is a river or stream that flows into another river. The Mississippi River is the busy waterway for boats and barges. The riverbanks are lined with leaves, high riverbanks that stop the river from overflowing. Next, we're going to talk about the climate of the Midwest region. When we talk about climate, we're talking about weather conditions that usually occur in a particular place. From day to day, we talk about the weather. What's the weather like today? Is it rainy? Is it sunny? Is it cloudy? But the climate is that overall weather condition that you typically would see in an area. Okay, temperature, amount of rain, wind, any kind of storms that might happen. In the Midwest, there can be severe weather. There are no oceans nearby to warm the land in winter and cool it in the summer. People in the Midwest are always watching the weather. The winters are long and harsh. In the winter, storms called blizzards bring heavy snow and freezing winds. In the winter months, the locks are closed because of the ice on the Great Lakes. Spring brings hailstorms that drop hailstones or lumps of ice instead of rain. In the spring and summer, there are tornadoes with strong, whirling winds. A tornado is a swirling windstorm that destroys almost everything in its path. Part of the Midwest region is called Tornado Alley. Tornado Alley is an area that has a very high number of destruction. Farmers must watch the weather closely. Strong winds are a danger to the flat, treeless land of the Great Plains. People who live in Tornado Alley are aware that tornadoes pose a potential danger for them. Building codes in these areas require that new buildings have strong roofs and a foundation that are tethered to the structure. That means they're tied to it. Many people have storm cellars, underground shelters that protect people from a tornado. Many areas have neighborhood tornadoes, sirens that warn people of imminent tornadoes. Plants and animals also adapt to the climate. Prairie grass has deep roots to find water. Some birds migrate to warmer places in the winter. Prairie dogs live underground. Bison once lived on the Great Plains. Bison have thick fur to help them survive the cold winters. Hunters killed most of them for their skins. Then people started protecting the bison. Now there are about 150,000 bison in the United States. The products and natural resources of the Midwest. What are products and resources? Do you remember that from economics? Products is something made by some people, a business, a factory. Natural resources, something that comes from the earth, natural, nature made it. We use the natural resources to make products. People in the Midwest use their natural resources to make goods and sell services. Soil is the most important resource. The Central Plains are covered with some of the best soil on earth. Farmers turn the Central Plains into farmland. There are many farms in the Midwest region, especially throughout Kansas and Iowa. Iowa has so much fertile soil that farms cover almost every inch of the state. Water towers and grain elevators may be the only tall buildings between one town and the next. The farms grow corn and wheat. Kansas produces most of the wheat we use to make bread. North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Ohio, Illinois, and Nebraska also produce large wheat crops. This is how the Midwest region earned its nickname, America's Breadbasket. Many people have jobs processing and shipping foods. Battle Creek, Michigan produces the most breakfast cereal in the country. Some of the harvest from the Midwest farms is fed to livestock. Livestock are animals raised on farms such as cattle, hogs, and chickens. The northern grasslands in Wisconsin and Minnesota are ideal for raising dairy cows. Dairy cows in the Midwest produce much of our milk and cheese. Other cattle are raised for meat. The meatpacking industry is an important industry in the Midwest. Meatpacking is the preparing of meat for sale. The Great Lakes provide a valuable natural resource, water. Large amounts of fresh water are needed to manufacture goods. As a result, many industries grew in this region. Many factories and steel-producing plants are located near the Great Lakes. Much of the steel produced in the Midwest region is used to make cars and trucks. Detroit, Michigan is called the Motor City, or Motown for short, because it is a center for automobile industry. Chicago, Illinois is the biggest city in the Midwest region. Sears Tower, one of the country's tallest buildings, is in Chicago. Chicago is an important center for business, manufacturing, and transportation because of its location near waterways. Chicago has always been a transportation hub or a center for moving goods and people. Long ago, railroad tracks fanned out from Chicago across the Midwest. Today, railroads, highways, airports, rivers, and lakes move more people and goods in and out of Chicago than any other city. Moving all these people and goods is big business. Chicago O'Hare's International Airport is one of the United States' busiest airports. About 200,000 people pass through O'Hare each day. That adds up to 73 million airplane passengers a year. Chicago O'Hare's International Airport alone employs 50,000 workers. Minnesota's Mall of America is the largest indoor shopping mall in the United States. The Mall of America has more than 520 stores. If you spent just 10 minutes in each store, it would take you 4 days and 3 nights to visit all of them. The Mall of America also has 50 restaurants, 14 movie theaters, and an amusement park. St. Louis, Missouri is called the Gateway to the West. Pioneers started their journey by heading west. The Gateway Arch in St. Louis was built to honor those pioneers. Made of gleaming stainless steel, the arch rises about 630 feet above the Mississippi River. Visitors can ride a tram to the top. 2 huge monuments are carved into the Black Hills of South Dakota. The first is Mount Rushmore National Monument. It shows the faces of 4 American presidents: George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln. Each head is 6 stories tall. The second monument honors a Lakota Indian chief named Crazy Horse. It is still being carved into the Black Hills. When it's finished, Crazy Horse Memorial will be the world's largest statue. Outdoor sports are popular in the Midwest. People enjoy horseback riding, fishing, and hunting during warmer weather. They go skiing, skating, snowmobiling, and ice fishing in the winter. Ice fishing is fishing on a frozen lake or stream through a hole in the ice. The fishermen drill large holes completely through the ice to the open water. Because of the cold weather, most fishermen use an ice shanty, which is a small shelter, to keep them out of the wind and blowing snow as they fish. Sometimes shanties can be left on the ice most of the winter and people group together in a shanty town. The food of the Midwest is often simple but filling, without a lot of spices. Because the Midwest produces most of America's grain, beef, and dairy products, these ingredients are used in many of the foods from this region. Pancakes, cornbreads, caramel popcorn, chicken pot pie, and pot roast are all the foods that came from the Midwest region. Midwesterners like to eat Chicago-style pizza, deep dish pizza with a crust up to 3 inches tall at the edge, with large amounts of cheese, chunky tomatoes, and other toppings. Another favorite food is a coney dog, which is a hot dog on a bun topped with meat chili, onions, and yellow mustard. The Midwest is home to several famous hamburger chains. Ray Kroc opened his first McDonald's restaurant in Des Plaines, Illinois in 1955. Today, McDonald's has over 32,000 restaurants in the United States and many other countries. Steak and Shake, Wendy's, Dairy Queen, and White Castle restaurants also started in the Midwest region. Two kinds of music came from the Midwest. Rock and roll music was invented in Cleveland in the early 1950s. Rock Around the Clock by Billy Haley and the Comets was the song that introduced rock and roll to America. His next record, Shake, Rattle, and Roll, was the first rock and roll record to sell 1 million copies. Rock and roll, with its pulsating drums, fast tempos, and loud guitars, provided teens of the 1950s the perfect excuse to dance crazy new dances and wear wild new haircuts. Rock and roll continued on to become one of the world's most popular and recognizable music forms. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is located in Cleveland, Ohio. Another style of music called Motown sound started in the 1960s with music from Motown Records in Detroit, Michigan. Motown music quickly became popular around the country. Motown Records was the first recording company to be owned by an African American and to feature African American musicians. In fact, Motown Records became the largest and most successfully recorded company in the United States. Many well-known bands and artists started at Motown Records. These artists include the Supremes, the Miracles, Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, the Four Tops, and Diana Ross.